Welcome to the Multiply Your Success podcast, where each week we help growth-minded entrepreneurs and franchise leaders take the next step in their expansion journey. I'm your host, Tom Dufour, CEO of Big Sky Franchise Team, and as we open today, I'm wondering how you keep a premium service premium when you're a global company, and how do you do it as a global franchise company with international franchisees and team members all over the world? Well, our guest today is Jason Waugh, and he shares with us his insights on global franchising, the real estate market, and keeping the quality high with a premium global franchise brand. Now, Jason serves as the president of Coldwell Banker Affiliates for Coldwell Banker Real Estate. In this role, he oversees the brand's marketing, franchise sales, and operations teams who support a network of almost 100,000 affiliated sales professionals in more than 2,700 offices across 47 countries and territories. Now, he previously served as the CEO and president of Berkshire Hathaway HomeServices Northwest Real Estate and Berkshire Hathaway HomeServices Real Estate Professionals. He also possesses a keen understanding of franchise culture and is passionate about equipping brokers with best-in-class technology, marketing, and services to deliver an unparalleled experience to consumers. You're going to love this interview, so let's go ahead and jump right into it.
I appreciate the opportunity, Tom. Jason Waugh. I am president of Coldwell Banker Affiliates.
Thank you so much for being here. And you have quite a system that you are responsible for, spanning around the globe. And one of the things that is interesting that I think is worth maybe as a starting point is just to talk a little bit about this idea of delivering, especially in a franchise sense, this idea of delivering superior customer service across a global brand. And how are you able to do that or keep up with something like that?
Coldwell Banker has been in existence almost 120 years. So there's a lot of lessons learned over that period of time. But, I'm super proud of the team that I've been able to join and work with. It's been almost 2 years since I've been at Coldwell Banker, and it's been a real joy. Inherited a phenomenal team. And again, with that sort of history and legacy, and I would contend Coldwell Banker is the most iconic brand in real estate. There's a lot of lessons learned over time in navigating different markets and different economies. But I think at the core of everything, you have to have clarity around who you are and what you want to be to your customer. And then two, partner with the right people. So you alluded to this. We're in almost 50 countries and territories globally, about 600 or so franchisees domestically, and then a very large corporate-owned side of the business as well. So the footprint is pretty expansive, but I think it starts with clarity around purpose, clarity of who you are, and then partner with the right people. And we're not going to be the best fit for everyone, and that's okay. We just want to partner with everybody that's looking for what we have to offer, and we want everybody that wants a high-value proposition.
I've been in franchising my whole career, over 20 years at this point, and a common thing that I've heard over the years is people having concerns about franchising applied to a premium service or a premium product, where there's really a fear of this high quality deteriorating as you expand. And here you are doing it on a global scale with lots of people all around the world, different cultures, different languages, and yet you're still able to do it. So I'd love for you just to kind of hear your thought on how you help keep that premium quality or this excellence.
Well, I think it starts with talent. You have talent that's committed to that, right? And so we have the best talent at our parent company, which is Anywhere Real Estate, down through Coldwell Banker. And so it begins there, and just a laser focus on creating an exceptional experience for your customer. So we do have one thing I've really been fixated in, it's, for lack of a better term, it's a rallying cry since I joined Coldwell Banker, is how do you make a large network feel smaller and more interconnected? And I think every large enterprise struggles with that, or at least it's an opportunity to improve in that area, whether you're in financial services, insurance, whatever industry you're in. The larger you get, you can lose that connectivity. So we talk an awful lot about, is this activity or is this resource in alignment with making this network feel smaller and more interconnected? And so we place a premium on relationships and learning what our customers need, because not everybody needs or wants the exact same thing. So, we certainly have to scale, but also be flexible and nimble enough to help folks achieve what they want to. So if you take, for example, we're running our third national campaign with Thursday Night Football and Amazon Prime. Well, we create these national campaigns, but for our local affiliates, they can take that national campaign and customize it for their local field, their local market conditions, whatever messaging that they want or the brand that they want locally. So for us, it begins with talent, clarity on who you are, and then really, focus on the relationships and delivering the experience for the customer, whether they're domestic or international.
I'd love for you to maybe talk on these two different parts. One is recruiting franchisee talent, and then the second is supporting those franchisees and how they recruit their own local representatives and their local talent in their own market. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think anytime somebody's talking with us or they're searching some network to potentially invest in and partner with, they're doing so because they've identified a gap in their business or an opportunity or some area that they need to address. So our perspective is knowing that, do we provide the best solution for whatever that issue is that you're trying to address? So really understanding the needs and wants of our customers and being honest and self-aware enough to say, we have the best solution for that, or maybe we don't. And so I think from a profile perspective of building out our franchise network, that's really where it begins. If people are engaging us because they recognize an opportunity that maybe isn't available going at it alone or on your own or as an independent. And for us, it's really understanding, what is that need? What is that opportunity? What is that gap? What is that issue? And do we have the best solution available to them to solve that? And so I think it's really that simple in terms of, building out, our network and, folks deciding whether to franchise with Coldwell Banker is the best solution for them. With respect to organic growth of helping our franchisees then grow and attract talent, that really gets back to that interconnected, partnership. And so how can we deliver and equip resources that they can cascade down and make available to their agents? And we place a premium on professional development. So we have an extensive and exhaustive professional development program. We've certainly got a war chest of tech tools and resources. I think that the challenge in any franchise network is the franchisee also has to lean in and take advantage of the resources at their disposal. And sometimes we're victim of, we have so many tools and resources, where do you start and where do you pick from? But I think that, you can get through that and navigate that process just with our business consultants, start here, perfect that, add this, and then add that. So, I think at the end of the day, it really is a partnership between franchisor and franchisee in terms of attracting talent and retaining talent.
You mentioned having lots of tools to choose from. And for an organization of your size, you have the ability to likely pursue any tools that would be of interest. Are there a few of these kinds of tools or strategies that you help implement or that your field coaches or business coaches, franchisee coaches would use and seen a big return in their support?
It's interesting. People ask me what business I'm in, and I'll pose that question, when I'm talking to, agents and our affiliates. And oftentimes we're in the real estate business, we're in the people business, we're in the relationship business, and all of that is true. I prefer the use of acronyms, just easier for me to remember. I believe we're in the car business and not auto industry, but CAR stands for client acquisition and retention. So when we're looking at either growing or building internally resources and tools or partnering with third parties, it has to answer that question. Is this resource, is this tool going to help our folks attract clients and retain clients? Because if it doesn't do that, then it doesn't need our time and attention and investment. And so we've got an exhaustive set of tools that address that, whether it's programs like Wealth Engine, where people can do research and find information if they want to really either break into that luxury space or they're already in that luxury space. They can use that resource to find folks that fit that profile to continue to build relationships in their network. I alluded to our relationship with Thursday Night Football. We created a product called the Move Meter, which analyzes certain components of a particular location. And, people can match if I want to see what it's like to live in Atlanta, which I believe you're in the Atlanta area, or I want to compare that to Seattle. This Move Meter matches those cities up and generates some key data points to whether it's cost of living, income, those sort of things. And then certainly we have tools and resources that once you just hit the go button, it just automatically stays in touch with customers and people in your sphere of influence, which is, kind of like saying we have color copiers in our offices. Of course, you have those resources. If there aren't, automated programs of high value to help inform consumers, then, you're really missing the boat on resources. So, but everything we look at, everything that we evaluate, it's got to answer that question. Is this going to help our folks attract clients and retain clients? If it does that, it's likely we're going to make that investment.
Oh, very, very well put. And the Move Meter is fantastic. I was not familiar with that. I actually have a good friend that as soon as we end, I will be messaging him and say, you have to check this out. He's debating between two cities right now, or two very different areas across the country. And I'm going to be presenting this to him to help him in his decision.
I appreciate that. It's exclusive to Coldwell Banker. So the Coldwell Banker Move Meter. I appreciate that, Tom.
Yeah, absolutely. We've been talking about global presence, and yet the beauty with franchising is you have local ownership in many of these markets. How have you found to help blend this idea of your brand consistency nationally, regionally, internationally, and then also providing the franchisee that flexibility? And my favorite things of franchising as a lifer in franchising is that local owner that can make rapid decisions for that local area. So I'd love to understand or hear a little bit about how you all do that.
We have this saying internally, freedom within a framework. And so certainly we want brand consistency in terms of our marks and look, but the people that we partner with, they want to be a premium provider and have a premium brand offering. So we get a lot of inconsistency there. And I think that's because we've got a profile of the entrepreneur that we want to partner with. But you bring up an excellent point. We understand and acknowledge this is their business, and we want them to own their business. We're in partnership with them. So our objective is, how can we partner with you to help you achieve your goals and help you achieve your agent's goals? And so we focus on growth through those, years. But we also want to bring that relationship and business partnership full circle and focus on succession planning early, just to prepare for the what if event, not just retirement. But we want to create hopefully a financial event at the end of their career, but also create continuity for the business asset, continuity for the agents, continuity for the employees, smooth transition from predecessor to successor in leadership. So we look at these relationships and these partnerships holistically from beginning to end. It's not just sign up, hey, we'll help you grow. We certainly do that, want to continue to do that, but we also have the end game in mind because we want continuity for everybody, but also hopefully create a good financial event at the end for the owner. But I think for us, it's just, I place a premium on self-awareness. If I'm ever going to write a book, it's going to be on self-awareness. And we're self-aware enough to know that we're in partnership with business owners that want the freedom and flexibility to grow their companies in the way they want to locally for themselves. It's so we've got, again, this freedom within a framework type of strategy.
The freedom within a framework, great explanation. One thing that I was thinking about in your brand, especially as a premium provider, we were talking about kind of this negative side of things or concern that oftentimes or fears that I have heard over the years that some people have in expanding a premium brand. And one thing I was curious about is how you manage or work with franchisees that maybe are not meeting the standard that you're expecting. So certainly you do the best you can to screen and bring in the best franchisees, and they try to bring in the best staff and team into their office. How do you kind of help manage that sometimes delicate situation?
Well, certainly you could look at the real estate industry the last 3 full years coming out of the prior decade, which was the greatest decade in the history of real estate. Really, the last 2 years of that decade, I would describe as unicorn years that we'll probably never see in the industry again, to a pretty significant pivot to where we are today and that we've been navigating the last 36 months. And we've had to recognize the realities of the business and transaction count, and it is near where they were 30 years ago. And now, albeit if you navigated 2009, 10, and 11, which was units and prices collapse, this last 36 months really just been isolated to units. Prices have continued to appreciate, or home values continue to appreciate. So a little bit different, but you still have to, acknowledge the impact on a local business and operator, and still, folks, how fluid it is getting in the business versus getting out of the business. And I think that just boils down to a partnership, and it's having, transparent, very vulnerable conversations between our senior growth consultants and their customer, which would be the franchise owner. And, it's really about, how do we partner together to weather any sort of market cycle? We had, again, as an industry, a historic decade. Well, the trade-off is it's been, 3 years that have been pretty complex and fluid and volatile. And you just, you partner with them and make sure that there's, open lines of communication. Again, to your point, have those, challenging, difficult conversations. But I believe every opportunity poses, or every challenge poses an opportunity. And I like to say I'm an optimist, but my optimism's rooted in reality, which is the data in our business. So I just defer to data, and I often refer to it as it's our most valuable currency. So what's that telling us? And the market that we're in today, 2 years ago, if somebody asked me what was the real estate market like, I could sit down, draft a narrative, and then I could travel any market in America, say the same words, and it would be applicable. It's returned back to a more normal real estate climate and environment where it's hyper local conditions. What's happening in the Northeast is dramatically different than, say, Florida and Texas, which is different than the Pacific Northwest, which is where I am, which is different than Southern California. So, you've got these kind of macro perspectives, but it really is, you got to be very, very hyper local in today's market conditions. So, it's, again, with 600 or so entrepreneurs and owners of a Coldwell Banker franchise, it's you just have to stay in constant contact and make sure that there is a solution that's a win-win for everybody. And sometimes it's just time to move on, and nothing wrong with that. We hate to see it, but if there is legitimate business reasons, and it sometimes it's not just the market or the economy, it's just time, or maybe there's no successor for the business. So it boils down to simple communication, being vulnerable, being candid, being very transparent with the good and the bad.
How you see things changing, maybe from a real estate standpoint, generally from a national basis in the U.S. market, or what you see occurring in the franchise real estate market, or just anything that you're kind of seeing down the road here?
Well, here's what I know. So I'll start with what I know. Most market contractions, if you look at history, most market contractions, and when I say contractions, either decline in units and prices, or one or the other, primarily units, or flat conditions. And that's really the market that we've been in. I mean, there was a contraction and then it's just been flat. If you look at history, those market environments last, those cycles are 3 to 4 years long. If you look at 1980 to 1982, 1989 to 1991, 2008 to 2011, each of those were 3 to 4 years. We're 3 full years into this current cycle. So if history repeats itself, we have another 6, 12, 18, 24 months of the current cycle before transitioning to a new cycle, which would be an appreciating cycle. So I trust that history will repeat itself. I think there's certainly the data would suggest that we're still in the short term going to continue to navigate some fluid and volatile and uncertain times. You look at the most recent jobs report, May and June were far worse than was originally reported. And so you got a 3-month cycle of, what's going on in the labor sector. Mortgage interest rates have fallen for 4 consecutive weeks, so that's a good thing. You look at, under 6.5 seems to be the rate where more buyers enter the market that maybe have voluntarily been on the sidelines. And we're kind of right there. It was average 30-year fixed last week was 6.58. So you look at 2024 when the market accelerated, it was, September-ish when rates were at 6.5 and below. So we're right there. You look at new construction and builder sentiment, starts, and I focus on permits and starts as far as those are the leading indicators to lag results. So I believe that one, history will repeat itself, and most of these type of market conditions last 3 to 4 years before the next cycle. And we all know real estate's cyclical. So I believe that we've got another, year, certainly the balance of 2025 and probably into 2026, where similar market conditions today and 2027 is probably the year where we see a noticeable change in market movement.
Yeah, very good. Very good. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And one question I always like to ask franchisors in particular is, as you think about franchising and managing your brand, what advice might you give to an emerging franchisor?
Well, I alluded to it in my opening comments. One, have clarity around who you are, what your business model is. And we're a high value business model. I think in real estate, there's really 2 camps. And there's no real new genius business model to our industry, even though there's been, talk about that. I'm not accepting of that. I think you're high value or low cost limited service. And it's just a business model. And so I think as a potential franchisee or as a potential franchisor, it's clarity around your business model, who you are, who you want to be to your customers. What's the experience that you want to create and deliver? I think it starts there. And then number 2, and I was just having this conversation with a newer franchisee last week, be really disciplined to the profile of your customer. And it is okay to subscribe to the belief that you're not the right fit for everybody. You just need to attract everybody that wants what you have to offer. So clarity around purpose, clarity around your value proposition, your offerings and deliverables, and be disciplined to the profile that aligns with that model. Just stay the course. What I have seen and experienced, when you start to become overly flexible and you start convincing yourself that it's okay to detour here or make this exception, sometimes it works out. More times than not, you've created more challenges. And I think at the end of the day, being mindful of the most important thing is delivering and creating an exceptional experience for the customer. And anytime you deviate off your original intent and your focus, sometimes that you can compromise that experience and that will not end well.
Well, Jason, how can someone get in contact with you, learn more about what you're doing, check out what Coldwell Banker is up to?
Great. Well, I appreciate that question. Certainly, Coldwell Banker is all over the internet. Go to coldwellbanker.com. If there's interest in franchising, go down to the bottom. You can learn more. You've got my email address. My cell number is 503-314-6015. Call me personally. It's interesting. I always offer in every talk that I get, big or small, I offer my cell number. People write it down. And people are astonished that somebody, at my position with just the size and scale of our network. But the reality of it is most people won't use it. But 503-314-6015 is my cell number. Call me, text me, email me, jason.waugh@cbhome.com or go to coldwellbanker.com.
Perfect. Well, Jason, this is a great time in the show, and we make a transition. We ask every guest the same 4 questions before they go. And the first question we ask is, have you had a miss or two on your journey and something you learned from it?
19 years old. If I could be doing anything differently, and I'm blessed. I have a career that I'm really fortunate to have, got a great family, all of those things. I'm very, very fortunate. But if I could be doing anything different, I would be a college basketball coach. And so I went to college and law school at Pepperdine University in Southern California. I take a concepts of coaching class my sophomore year. It's a Tuesday, Thursday night class. The professor is a highly decorated coach in his respective sport, and both as a player, as a coach, national championships, Olympic team, very, very highly decorated. I approach him and a great, great gentleman, class act. Walk up to him after class one Tuesday night, and I say to him, I want to be a college basketball coach. What do I have to do to get there? And he says to me, as politely and as nice as he could, Jason, you're not playing college basketball, so it's probably not going to work out for you. I would pursue something else. And at 19, I wasn't confident enough to say to this highly decorated coach, you don't know what you're talking about. So, fine. I pursued business. I went to law school. And again, it's all worked out. But that experience, not as a regret, but it's really served with my wife and I. We've got 5 daughters. Our oldest is leaving for college next week. But, I've shared that story multiple times. And the takeaway from that is, don't ever let anyone deter you from pursuing what you have a passion for. And, get people that are supportive and behind you, stay close to them. Those that don't believe it's possible, just respectfully ignore them. Don't let anybody deter you from pursuing your passion. So that was, not a regret, but it has served such a great life example for me that, hopefully my kids have listened. They're teenagers, so they've heard it. I don't know if they actually understand it yet, but hopefully they do later in life. But that would be one example that just is always, when I've been asked that question or a variation of that question, that story and example I just always think of, because it has served me so well. And interestingly enough, we've got a Coldwell Banker agent that lives and works in Malibu and has a relationship with this coach. So November of last year, so November 2024. So what is that? That would have been 93. I would have had that class, 93, 94. So we're talking 30 years later. I get a video of the two of them. And our Coldwell Banker agent, I had shared this story with him at some past event. And he happened to record this video with this coach 30 years later. He's like, listen, Jason Waugh is the president of Coldwell Banker now. And he was sharing a story how you just crushed his dreams 30 years earlier. And then the coach gets on there, Jason, I'm so sorry, but I'm so proud of all the things you've accomplished. So it was pretty cool one morning I woke up to that video via text. But that's, again, just, follow your passion. Don't let anybody stand in the way or deter you from pursuing whatever it is you want to pursue.
What a full circle story. That's truly amazing. What a blessing to receive that video. Let's talk about a make or a highlight that you'd like to share.
Well, that's actually harder because there's so many of them, right? Both personally and professionally. But what I love about this business, and you've said the word multiple times, entrepreneurs. And I just have such a deep respect for entrepreneurs. There's a lot of risk that comes with that, but there's great reward too. And so, to partner with folks that have taken on intentionally that risk and succeeded. I mean, there's just nothing like it to be, a bystander, be in the co-pilot seat, if you will, of that experience. And there's a gentleman in my former company, and we had these career nights. He comes in and he grew up as a farmer, as a dairy farmer, and multiple generations. And he comes into this event. I mean, dirty, like he just came from the farm, got in his truck, and came to this event. And I always took the position, I'm going to try to convince people from pursuing real estate sales, because if they push back, that's the person I want. If they actually just were like, well, now that you put it that way, yeah, maybe I'll go pursue something else. Great. I saved them a lot of time. I saved us a lot of time. And I remember having a conversation with him. And so not only was his presentation and appearance was just not representative of, our business and the asset class that we work in. It was pretty poor eye contact and not, great communication. And I respectfully said, thank you for, coming tonight and learning more. Respectfully, I just don't believe that this is the right industry for you, and wish you well. 3 weeks later, I get a call. I don't recognize the name, schedule the interview. It's the same gentleman comes in from 3 weeks earlier, but in a clean polo shirt, slacks, firm handshake, great eye contact. I mean, a totally different person. And I changed my mind. I hire him. And that would have been, it's 2025. He's still at that firm, which, I left 2 years ago. And so that would have been 2023. He's been there at least 18 years and totally changed his life, his financial, status, everything. And, it's those sort of experiences that and I've got more than I can share of those experiences. But that's what this industry has afforded me, is those opportunities to collaborate and partner and help folks achieve levels of success that they never envisioned for themselves, right? I mean, that's just been phenomenal. I mean, my father said, and I always think about this, because the gentleman that brought him into the business used the same statement on him, and he used it on me. He said, if you want to impact lives, you can impact more lives running this company or in leadership than you can one transaction at a time. And for me, that really, was what made me pursue leadership over, production in this business, was the impact on lives. And it's just afforded me so many wins and so many returns, and continues to today. That's why I love the franchise business, because it's, the best of all worlds. You've got these franchise owners that are taking on this risk and embracing this entrepreneurial spirit. But then they're also hiring all these other entrepreneurs that are agents for their company. So it's just awesome. I got more wins than I know what to share.
Oh, wonderful. What a great story. Thanks for sharing that. And let's talk about a multiplier that you've used to help multiply yourself as you've grown personally, professionally, organizations you've run.
There was an experience in 2013. I attended a John Maxwell leadership event in Orlando, Florida, a week long. That was life-changing for me. I mean, every speaker was dynamic. And I remember every single night returning to my hotel room, jotting down notes. And I would recap and summarize my day and email to my leadership team back in Portland and Seattle. Just all about the life lessons and things that were applicable, whether it's personally or professionally, but also the commitments that I was making as a leader based on this event. And that's 12 years later. I can't get enough of John Maxwell's content, but I'm always reminded of certain lessons learned there. And one of the key takeaways from that, for whatever reason, I was included in a much smaller group at a pre-event with John. And we talked about work-life balance. And I remember that because we talk a lot about that, at least in real estate, how you balance. And it was really interesting, his take on that. That's not achievable. It's more about there's just seasons of life, and every season has a beginning, middle, and end. And if you approach it that way, so in work, this is a season, and so there's a beginning, middle, and end to that season. So you really got to just be really disciplined to your routine, to your time management, to your priority management. But this notion of this perfect work-life balance. I mean, there's a compromise and a trade-off in all of that. Whereas if you approach it that this is just a season of life, honey, it is so busy at work and the market, has these opportunities, whether it's a merger and acquisition opportunity, or maybe it's a sale, or, whatever that specific situation is, there's a beginning, middle, and end to that. But right now, I've got to focus and commit my time there, and it's just going to eat up a lot of our time. But you know what? And my wife and I did this. We just booked a week in Cabo in October because I've got this event that we're preparing for, our national conference in September. And it's getting a lot of time and attention because it needs to and it deserves it. But at the same time, it's going to end. And, we've booked a week in Cabo in October. So that was, from a multiplier. I always reflect back on that week-long experience, the lessons learned from that, and try to, just be mindful of those lessons learned. And then a second big takeaway of that was leadership is about modeling the right behaviors. And so I often just, am I modeling the right behavior? And if you do that, things just tend to multiply because they cascade down. And then your team models, a certain behavior for their team. And it just has this cascading effect. So, that event in 2013 was life-changing for me, continues to be lessons that I reflect on and be mindful of. And one of my favorite, I start every morning, my team, the first thing that they hear from me every morning is an email titled Morning Mindset. And it's just it's intended to be an inspirational quote. Just get in the right mindset from the get-go to set yourself up for success each day. And so that's, Monday through Friday. I give them a break from Jason on Saturdays and Sundays. But one of my favorite quotes is by Dennis Mannering. Attitudes are contagious. Is yours worth catching? And I think about modeling the right behavior, and is my attitude, it's contagious. So is the attitude that I'm projecting right now worth catching? And I'm just mindful of those two things day in and day out, all day long. Just try to live by that. Listen, we all have our moments. We all have our times. Best thing you can do is unplug and separate yourself and regroup and then re-engage in those moments. But, modeling the right behavior, attitudes are contagious, is yours worth catching. Two principles that I just really try to subscribe to, live by. And if you can execute that more times than not, good things tend to happen.
The final question we ask every guest, Jason, is what does success mean to you?
There's two lenses, right? You have the selfless lens and you have the selfish lens. Selfishly, it's, creating a lifestyle and creating opportunity for your families and your children. My wife and I have five daughters, 18 to 12. Our oldest will be 19 at the end of next week and leaves for college on Wednesday. And I wrote a college tuition check last week. And so just the ability to create opportunities for our children and live a certain lifestyle. If I can provide that, to me, that is success. Selfishly. Selflessly, it is about participating in some way that our folks are successful. There's so many, but I think about this one gal that grew up pretty modest means, very blue collar family, and she was working at a local family friend brokerage the first 5 years out of college. And she did a deal with one of my very experienced brokers, and my experienced broker came back and said, "This gal's a winner. You've got to go recruit her." So I start the process. She made me work 10 full months until she joined my office and company. So either I'm not very good at it or she, just needed some time. But I look at her business today and what she's achieved and the financial freedom and independence from where she can, and knowing that, she's reached goals and heights that she never even had for herself. I mean, I'm just surrounded by, so many of those experiences and opportunities. That's what drives me every single day. And it's those successes. It's really the success that others have achieving whatever goals that they have. And I remember challenging a gentleman that I'm still very good friends with today, who was with our former company, still at my former company, and he's going on 35 years there. But he used to tell me when I first started working with him, Jason, I want to make seven figures. I want an airplane, wanted all this and that. And I challenged that. I said, I don't believe that's what you want. And he's like, how dare you? Of course, it's exactly what I want. I said, I don't believe that. And he's like, why would you not believe that? And I said, because you show up, you're the first person every single day in the office. You hit the ground running, you make your calls. But at 12 o'clock, you're on your way to the golf course every single day. You show up in the office ready to go golfing. You do the work. But what you really want is you want to make enough money to then also have a Mercedes, but play golf every day. That's a great life. But all you're doing is setting yourself up for disappointment that you didn't hit that seven figures. You don't own an airplane. But your behaviors aren't really in alignment with those goals. So be honest about what you want. What you want is you want to make $500,000 and play golf every single day. That's a great life. And that's the life he's living. So, again, success for me, looking through a selfish lens, is about family and creating opportunity. A selfless lens, it's about all the wins and successes and participating in a way that, you have these folks achieve levels of success that they didn't even have for themselves. And they did all the work. And I don't want to ever take credit for that. But, being a co-pilot in that journey and process is what makes this business so rewarding. And that's success to me. When you can put your head down on the pillow at night and know that people you've partnered with have achieved, levels of success that they didn't ever even have for themselves or envision for themselves, that's pretty rewarding.
Oh, wonderful. Wonderful. Well, as we bring this to a close, Jason, is there anything you were hoping to share or get across that you haven't had a chance to yet?
Well, you asked such great, compelling questions. I think we've fleshed everything out. I will say if real estate, being a real estate either agent or owner of a franchise, if you want a high value business partner and a network of professionals that are committed to your success and subscribe to a belief that freedom within a framework, because you're the boss, you're the owner, you're the operator, it's your brand in your local market, Coldwell Banker is the company to partner with if you want a high value business model. So give me a call.
Jason, thank you so much for a fantastic interview. And let's go ahead and jump into today's 3 key takeaways. So takeaway number 1 is when he talked about franchising and having a premium brand. And he said for him, they're focused on creating a great customer experience. And they do that by having their focus on an acronym he described as CAR. For them, it's client acquisition and retention. And I liked how he also shared for an emerging franchise brand, he said, you need to have that clarity on the purpose. And having that clarity allows you to maintain the brand quality that you're going for. So I think that's a great, great takeaway for keeping that brand premium. Takeaway number 2 is when he talked about keeping brand consistent locally and globally. And I loved that description he used of franchising. And he said it is freedom within a framework. Freedom within a framework. And so for those of you in the franchise world, I think that's a great way to describe this to potential franchisees and also to your current franchisees, to remind them that franchising is freedom within a framework. Takeaway number 3 is when he described success. And I loved that he broke it down into defining success through 2 different lenses or categories. He said the first one is selfish and what he wants to create, something that's personal for him. And the second is selfless. So the selfish lens and the selfless lens, and looking at it through both of those vantage points and what success is defined in both of those areas, not just one or the other. Now it's time for today's win-win. So today's win-win comes from when he talked about the miss when he was in college and he was 19 and had a coach or a teacher talk to him and kind of deterred him from pursuing something that he sought and that he wanted to accomplish and become. And he said for him, that lesson learned has served as a reminder for him, which is don't ever let anyone deter you from pursuing something you have a passion for. I loved when he said that. Don't ever let anyone deter you from pursuing something you have a passion for. And I would share that with each of you and folks tuning in here, whether you're thinking about franchising your business or buying a franchise or taking that next step in your career or for some personal goal that you have. I thought that was just a great win-win, because don't let someone else's ideas deter you from something you have a passion for. And so that's the episode today, folks. Please make sure you subscribe to our podcast and give us a review, and we would greatly appreciate a 5-star rating as well. And remember, if you or anyone you know might be ready to franchise their business or take their franchise company to the next level, please connect with us at BigSkyFranchiseTeam.com to schedule your free, no obligation consultation. Thanks for tuning in, and we look forward to having you back next week.